Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. Very special guest. We're wearing the same clothes we did in the last video because we're just hanging out, having a good time, and we are in Dallas, Fort Worth, just checking out the scene. We're hanging out, having some good food, but we thought we would take a break and discuss Adam's favorite Sega Genesis games of all time. Now, if you don't know who Adam is, this is Adam Koralik, Sega expert, Sega fan, not a fanboy, but fanatic.
You know, in hindsight, we really should have swapped shirts. That's all I was thinking. I should be wearing that. You should be wearing this.
Well,
that would have messed with everybody.
Right. Well, I'm a big Sega fan too, and I've been a hardcore fan since I got my Sega Genesis in 1991. When very briefly, when the Genesis came out in '89, I thought it was cool and I wanted one, but I was still playing a lot of ColecoVision and NES and Atari and all that. I thought, I don't have to have one until Sonic that came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I must have it. I rushed out and got one. But we're gonna talk about Adam's 5 favorite Genesis games. And we're gonna do this quickly, so let's go. We're gonna not necessarily go in order, maybe, or just...
Yeah, if you want to build anticipation, perhaps go from the bottom.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
But it also implies that I know them in order,
right.
Which I don't. So we're just gonna have to go with what comes to mind.
Sure.
So no particular order, except for, I guess I'll save the one I know for sure is the first one.
Right.
As the last one.
There you go.
Then again,
your favorite for last. The best for last.
I guess.
Yeah.
Still seems anticlimactic just because I know what it is. So that ruins it for me.
Yeah.
I was gonna be surprised, but all right. I'm gonna go with one of my all-time favorites. It's actually I'm gonna mess with our list. The one, because we were talking about this before and I was trying to think of it. And I'm changing it.
Uh-oh. Calling an audible.
Yeah, calling an audible. That's a football, handball, and egg.
Right.
Okay.
Sports ball.
Sports. No, I know sports. It's hand egg. It's
hand
the
egg.
hand egg one, right?
Right.
All right. Streets of Rage 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I love that game. That was one of my all-time favorites as a kid. It was one of those games where, in hindsight, I don't know how I was allowed to play that.
Right.
But it was probably because my mom was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, for the time, it was considered pretty violent.
Yeah, exactly. But then I go like, no, that was really cool. One of the great things about that game was I remember playing that a lot, and with a bunch of my buddies, and actually my sister as well. And we would just kind of play this game together and have a lot of fun beating up all the bad guys. But one thing that we did, because you're kids and you just come up with stupid narratives, the game doesn't have much of a story that is apparent, unless you actually read the text, which no kid's gonna do.
Right. Skip past.
So we just come up with our own reason for everything that's happening here. So I don't necessarily remember our motivation for what the characters we're playing as were, but we would basically name all the baddies different things. Like, oh, that's our friend Chris. Yeah, that guy looks like Chris, so we're beating up Chris. Or like, there was this one character who kind of, like, later on in the game almost looks like Michael Jordan, but is like a boxer. So we were like, why is Michael Jordan in this game? Why do we have to beat up Michael Jordan? Like, because we're from Chicago. And we're like, you can't hurt the goat.
Right.
But anyway, it was like, so we had a blast playing that.
My son and I played Streets of Rage 2 probably more than any other game when he was a kid. Absolutely loved it. So many great memories.
I think sticking with the fighting genre, again, no particular order.
Or at least the beat 'em up genre.
Yes, let's go with that. Yes, that's more accurate.
Because someone in the comments is going to say, it's not a fighting game.
It's not a fighting game. I'm stopping.
Which they used to call side-scrolling combat, but then they started calling them beat 'em up.
We know! It's okay.
Simmer down.
Here's a pro tip for YouTube. If you're mad about it in the comments, you're not the first person who said anything. Okay, so with that particular qualifier that it is not a fighting game, it is a beat 'em up.
Right.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Hyperstone Heist. Now, this game I always feel is kind of underrated because people always remember Turtles in Time, Super Nintendo. Everyone's like, oh, that's the go. So yeah, the Genesis couldn't quite run Turtles in Time, so they essentially had to make it their own. Like, it's essentially a watered down version in some sense.
Right.
That's how people look at it. I would argue it's actually better. I actually have a
hot
lot
take.
more fun.
Hot take.
I actually think it's a lot more fun. It's more, there's subtleties, there's nuance changes that are different, but also, I don't know, I just had a lot more fun playing it. I also, to be fair though, it's an easier game than Turtles in Time is, but I think I honestly maintain Hyperstone Heist.
Well, so many 8-bit and 16-bit games are just frustratingly difficult to try to finish. When you stumble across an easier one like that one or Felix the Cat or something, they're kind of fun to actually be able to beat it without beating your head against the wall.
So next up, what was I gonna go with? I don't want to say that one yet. What was the other one? Oh, duh, Aladdin. So Aladdin's an interesting case because where do we even start? First of all, Aladdin. Let's be honest. A lot of people like to look back at the Genesis and Super Nintendo and say the Super Nintendo version of anything was always better. Aladdin is an obvious case where that is not true. Well, it's not even just because you can throw apples, though that is cool. People forget that back in the day, Disney didn't just make the same game twice. In fact, Disney didn't make the game at all. They would always license out the IP to different developers. So I don't know exactly why they did this, but in the case of Aladdin, they licensed it out to Capcom for the Super Nintendo game and said, build us an Aladdin game. So they did. In the case of the Genesis, they licensed it out to Sega and said, Sega, make us a game. And they did. They are two completely different games that do not play at all like each other. And it is almost universally agreed that the Genesis game is the superior game.
I certainly prefer it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And the first time I noticed that was I had a buddy who down the street who had a Super Nintendo, and he bought Aladdin. He's like, oh, come over and play Aladdin. I'm like, I already have it for the Genesis. Why do I need to play it? And we just kind of did that. We crossed paths. And of course, I liked mine better. He liked his better. When really you're a kid and you're just defending it because you own it. But I was like, his was objectively worse. It just was. So Aladdin is an unbelievable game. I still remember the cheat code. Like, I put that in to skip levels and everything. I played that a million times based on, of course, obviously a wildly awesome film. It's hard not to love Aladdin on the Genesis. And just, it is, I will admit, people will point out, like, Aladdin is one of the it's one of the few successful Genesis games that really broke through, that everybody wanted or had or has played, that wasn't Sonic related.
Right. Which is a game that you constantly see even today. You still see boxed copies.
Yeah, it's a common. Because it was so that's really rare for the Genesis. Because usually the thing with the Genesis games is that the best ones are the lesser known ones. That doesn't mean they all make my list, but it does mean they're quality. And so notable exceptions to things like Gunstar Heroes, which is obviously a high quality game that unless you're into Sega, you've never heard of. Okay, but one that is lesser known, unless you actually watch my channel, because a lot of people do drop this reference on me. I guess we'll go with my number 2 here. Ronald McDonald's Treasure Land Adventure.
Good graphics, cute game, fun.
Dude, it's made by Treasure.
Right.
Like the guys
Speaking of Gunstar Heroes.
Yeah, exactly. They would go on to make like Ikaruga. They made a McDonald's game. Now the thing is, you look at it, you're like, well, this is gonna be dumb, like, and that's what I thought too as a kid. Now I've said, and I remember this because I remember seeing it in a store when it came out. Now I'm chunky. I was a fat kid, like a real fat kid, and I'm sure you don't look like you've never eaten before. So we go to the store, and I remember seeing that, and I guarantee that my thought process was McDonald's. Give me, and so to think that I could take McDonald's in the form of a video game home with me, I didn't know what to expect.
A fat kid's game.
What exactly? I didn't know exactly what to expect, so I started playing it thinking, like, I don't know what this is. If you had told me that you were going to play as this clown with magical powers that could just murder anything in front of him, and then you would just, this platform where you'd get from place to place just killing things constantly with your magical force powers, or essentially whatever you want to call it, it all in service of a treasure map that you don't even care about as a character. You're like, I got nothing better to do today. Let me ruin a bunch of empires as a magical clown. Right. I would never have guessed that was the plot, because it has almost nothing to do with McDonald's. You're essentially playing with the characters of the Ronald McDonald universe. Right. And so you'll see various characters that are familiar with the Grimace, of course. Everybody loves Grimace or Grimace Shake and all that. Funny about that, you can piss the Grimace off to the point where you can't beat the game if you piss him off.
Really?
So I remember this. So you run into the various characters, and the whole time you're collecting these little like red jewels. That's essentially your health. But these moocher characters you run into, the game actually tries to trick you. The first one you run into is a Hamburglar, who of course wants to steal from you.
My favorite McDonald's character.
And so first time you meet him, he's like, "Hey Ronald, what's up? I was wondering if like you could give me some, jewels." And you have no incentive to do it, so you don't do it. And he just gets mad at you, but he has no effect on the game, so you just leave. So every time you see a character after that, you're kind of like, why would I give them the jewels? So I see the Grimace. I remember doing this, and you come up to him, he's like, I'm hungry, give me jewels. That's how I imagine he talks. And so he's just basically asking for jewels, and we're saying no. And then he's like, no, come on, man. You're like, no, come on. No. For real, come on. And so he's like, fine. He sits down and he blocks a door that is absolutely essential for you to get through. At that point, you realize you can't beat the game because you didn't give him the jewels.
Right.
Now, you'll run into the same problem with a couple of the other characters. That I don't remember the name of the bird chick that flies. Or
Yeah, I don't remember the name.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think it's named like Birdie. I think it's like literally that stupid. But she will do the same thing. Like if you basically tell her like, no, I won't give you any jewels, she doesn't get all mad. She's like, fine. So there's a part later where you fall off this train, and as you're falling down, you're fighting this evil train conductor. And I argue he's not really evil. He's just a guy running a train. You're a clown just killing stuff on his train. So really, you're the bad guy here.
Right.
But anyway, so you kill him by knocking him off a building. He falls face first, and he just smacks into the ground and dies. You have to assume he's liquefied. And you're gonna die too. Your magical clown powers don't include flying for whatever reason. So you know who comes to get you? Birdie. I'm assuming that's her name. Unless you didn't give her the jewels, then she just went.
I can tell you spent a lot of time with this game.
I do love that game.
That's awesome.
But anyway, so
Hidden gem for the console. For
it
sure.
is actually.
Yeah.
Well, it is and it isn't. It is a hidden gem in the sense that I would say most people are not going to know that.
Right.
But it definitely has gotten a little more justice and exposure because it is now a very expensive game. People are very aware of it. I mean,
like Truxton, like Gunstar Heroes, there were certain Genesis games that are so beloved that people just want to play. The fact that they want to play them has driven the price up.
Yeah.
And that's a great reason for a price to go up because everybody wants to play it.
Precisely, and because they didn't have the massive amounts of re-release of things like Aladdin.
Right.
And our next one, which was kind of obvious. All-time the GOAT for the Genesis. I'm just going to say it. Sonic 2, not Sonic 1.
Right.
I am going to go out on a limb here and say it. I'm just going to say it. Sonic 1, not a good game. I'm serious.
You're saying it's not even a good game?
No, it's not a good game. It's at best...
It's a great game.
It's at best mediocre.
It's great.
It's at best mediocre on a curve.
Sonic 2 is my favorite of the three, of any of them.
The thing that hurts Sonic 1, in my opinion, is it makes sense. It was the first one. Not all the mechanics are quite there. So things like the spin dash, which is an absolute essential, does not exist unless you play the Sonic Jam Sega Saturn version or that Game Boy Advance re-release, which was just based off the Sonic Jam version. Things like the concept of upgrading to Super Sonic are not there. So you'll do the whole thing playing. You'll try to get the Chaos Emeralds only to realize pointless other than side quest. Whereas Sonic 2 really incentivized that.
Right.
Sonic 2 was truly everything a Sonic sequel needed to be. I think that game is essentially flawless.
Yes.
I love it. I enjoy Sonic and Knuckles. I enjoy Sonic 3. Sonic 2 is the best one.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the side ones like Sonic Spinball and all that I don't really care about. But and I'll also say this, Sonic CD...
Uh-oh. Hot sports opinion.
A little overrated. I wish I liked it. I really do. Like, I've played it through. I'm just like, to me, it kind of falls into the same territory as Sonic 1. But then I found out years later why that was. Sonic CD was made in conjunction with Sonic 2 by two different teams. The team that made Sonic 1 went on to make Sonic CD. A different team made Sonic 2. The talented team made Sonic 2.
Right.
I said it. And I work with Sega. I said it.
Well, I am a huge Sonic 2 fan. I have just incredibly great memories of playing that game with my niece. So much fun. Such a fantastic game. And it's basically a perfect game.
Dude, I got to the point, I was so good at it, I can't pretend I'm still as good at it. But I got to the point, because you can get all 7 Chaos Emeralds to get Super Sonic, right? If I recall correctly, so the Green Hill Zone's the first 2 levels, right? Part 1 and Part 2. If I recall correctly, there are 3 places in the first level where you can, jump. You can get 50 rings. You can jump into the thing and do the special zones to get the emeralds. And in Emerald Hill Part 2, or Green Hill Zone Part 2, sorry. There is technically 4 of them. One of them is very well hidden, where you can actually go and get the 50 rings thing. I reached a point where I was so good at that, I got all 7 Chaos Emeralds after just the first level.
And how old were you at this point?
It would be funny if I said 36, like my actual age now. But no, the truth is I was probably like 9 or 10.
See, that's just an incredible time to be a gamer, because these games just seem like magic, and you could have so much time to spend with them, and you would literally explore every inch of every level. and you would just play them over and over and over again until you had every part of these games memorized, because you had all the time. You had a young, fresh, impressionable mind where you could remember everything about each game.
It's kind of like when they tell you you can learn a language easily when you're young, but when
right?
You're older, you can't. It's kind of the same thing. Like
That's
you can
a
learn
great
the language
analogy.
of the game.
That's a fantastic.
So it was
analogy.
funny too, because like I remember doing this as a kid. I was so good at it. Like I had a buddy who had a Genesis and he really loved Sonic 2, and he was always trying to. He couldn't get Super Sonic. He never unlocked. We're discounting the cheat code thing. Obviously, that's
right.
Which I still memorize, by the way. Not numerically, muscle memory. You put me in front of that cheat code. I don't know. It's like a Rain Man thing. It just comes out.
Right.
But he would bring me over to his house and he's like, yeah, my buddy Michael wants to see it, and can you just do it? And I was like, I'll try, but it was like, you're also 10, so there's like this pressure. Can you guys like hide in the bathroom and I'll do this by myself?
Right.
And then as soon as they would do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
But they come back like as if I was bringing in a ringer. It's like, no, it was me, obviously, but it was just like,
right.
So that's that age. And
hard to perform under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. I've done a little better since. But
right.
Yeah, it was a different era. It was fun.
Yeah, great times. And those were before you had massive game collections. And you, as a kid, you played the games you had no matter if they were good or bad, no matter what. And a game that great, you played the hell out of, because you had all the time in the world, you had all the imagination in the world, and you just, there was nothing like, I mean, they say the goal. Okay, so there's this great question. What was the golden age of comic books? What was the golden age of video games? The answer, can't remember who said it. The answer is 12. What were you playing when you were 12 years old? Or it could be 9 or 10 or whatever. So yeah, nothing like it. Great memories, Adam. I really appreciate you sharing these. Guys, let us know in the comments, what are your top 5 Sega Genesis games of all time? That would be awesome. Or if you just want to throw down your favorite, that would be great. Is Sonic is Sonic a bad game? Or what? Just let us know in the comments.
Bad.
Okay.
I just said it wasn't that good.
Okay. Regardless, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Be sure and check out Adam Koralik's channel. You probably already have if you're watching my channel, but if you haven't, check it out. I will leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much. We will talk to you in another video. We got the Dreamcast coming up next. Adam's Top 5. So be sure and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell or whatever. Ring the bell so you get those notifications. Talk to you in another video.
It's me, Mario! Here we go!